Hey everybody, Tamiyo here from Team Rogue Tech. I'm here to talk about my Bant Wolf Run control today. Do a little deck tech, kind of break it down. I don't want to take too long. I'll make it a little bit quick. If you guys want a little bit more in-depth, feel free to comment, let me know, and I'll give you a little bit more information about it. But the main points I want to get to is just kind of discuss each card in just a little bit of detail. And then I want to talk about some of the spoilers that are coming out for Dragon's Maze and how they're going to affect my archetype and what kind of changes I've thought about, what I've been playtesting and how they've been doing. And I'm kind of excited to show you because it seems to be doing really well, and I think I'm going to be sticking with this deck for a while. So to start off with the creatures here with my Bant Wolf Run control, I get to start with a couple Snapcaster Mages, of course, 3 to be exact. Originally, I had 2. I'd like to go up to 3 because I wanted to see them a little bit more often in play testing and at FNM and things like that. And then I also have 3 Angel of Serenity, just super powerhouse bomb when she gets on the board mid-late game. It's just really, really good. Card advantage, board position. She's pretty end game. She doesn't win now, but she's pretty much a win now because she hits and just kind of takes over. Then I got a few Planeswalkers to help me stabilize a bit. I'm running 3 Architect of Thought. I really like seeing this guy, and I like seeing 2 and 3 of them in a game. The more, the better. I just drop him -2, a little mini Factor Fiction over and over again. His +1 usually isn't too relevant because usually if they even have creatures, they're usually big enough to kill him on the next attack, whether or not you +1 him or not. So I usually just drop him -2. Even if I think he's going to die the next turn, I just drop him, get a little bit of extra cards in my hand, usually pick up an Angel of Serenity or something that I'm looking for, like Supreme Verdict or Sphinx's Red. The other Planeswalker I'm running is 2 Tamiyo. The reason why I'm running this is because it's really good against like Nephalia, Drownyard, and Kessig, like opponent's Kessigs, and just one-off threats that might be giving you a bother. At my local FNM, and probably yours, we're kind of overrun with all these kids and people running these, cheap aggro variants. So Tamiyo isn't really that great, and I'll show you how this deck is going to be built for FNM. She's definitely not making that cut, but for like a PTQ or a GP or something a little bit bigger, we expect more Tier 1 decks. She's definitely in there. Moving on, I have a couple, 3 Azorius Charm. Can't leave home without Azorius Charm. It gets me through my early game to let me hit a Supreme Verdict without dying while I get there. Also, in slower matchups, lets me draw a card. Azorius Charm's kind of a simple one. I don't really need to talk to that one too much. And then I run playset of Farseek because I'm running Wolf Run and I need to see red mana and I'm only splashing red. Farseek lets me search for that Steam Vents or Sacred Foundry that I need turn 2 to make sure I have the red that I need later on. Of course, we can't play white-blue Control Shell without 4 Sphinx's Revelation, and I'm curious as to how this card will be affected with Dragon's Maze. If you've been keeping up with the spoilers, there's a lot of obvious hate for Sphinx's Rev. There's Sire of Insanity, the Notion Thief. I think there's one more that is really, really big on hating on Sphinx's Rev, so I'm curious to see, if this card will even be playable. Hopefully it will be because I like it. Of course, I think it runs the format a bit, but I don't think it's overpowering that much that we need so much hate for it. So hopefully it won't get kicked out too much. And then finally I have 4 Supreme Verdicts. I run 4 because in an aggro format, especially at my FNM, I want to see it as soon as possible. I need to hit that, especially against Naya Blitz. I need to hit a turn 3 or turn 4 Supreme Verdict if I'm even thinking about staying alive to get to my mid-game and eventually to my late game and stabilize with an Angel of Serenity or something to win here. And because I actually want to play Bant Control, it's not just Bant mid-range, I am running counter spells, so I'm running 3 Dissipates and 2 Syncopates. Just a little bit of versatility in counter spells. Syncopate's a nice turn 2 counter spell if you get it. Usually my turn 2 is spent on a Farseek. If they're Naya Blitz and I have a Syncopate in hand and a Farseek, I may hold off just to counter their Burning Tree turn 2. But other than that, it's pretty much just exiling stuff, which is always really good, especially for Drunk Reanimator. You don't want to run regular counterspells that just throw things to the yard. And then to top it off, because I am splashing red mana, I wanted to use that a little bit in the main board, and I've always wanted to play this card. I thought it would be really good in the current meta, and it seems to be working really well in playtesting and at FNM. So I'm running 2 Assemble the Legion. This card really is kind of my plan A sometimes. I mean, I have more Angel of Serenity than I have of this, but this is a lot cheaper and comes out a lot earlier. And it's just a really, really fast clock that you put on your opponent, and it allows you to have a bunch of blockers get in on attacks. Even if they have a Blind Obedience out and your guys come into play, they're just going to get overrun eventually. Most decks can't keep up with that. Aside from them having a Jace Architect of Thought with their +1 to make all my guys, 0/1s when I attack, then, they're just going to overpower and get through. And then the last slot in the main board goes to one of Aurelia's Fury. Really good control card. I've been enjoying it, and it seems to play pretty well with this deck and what my goal is and how this deck runs. It's really nice against control matchups to kind of bait out a counterspell. It makes them do something when you want them to do it and puts priority on you, and so you can respond the way you want to. It's nice that if you know you're going to win with a Wolf Run, but you're worried about like an Azorius Charm or something, Aurelia's Fury for 1, force them to respond. If they counter it, they probably tap out to do so, or they might not have another counterspell up. If they have 2 up, that happens. I've seen it happen, but hopefully they don't, and you just, they waste a counter on it, or they don't respond to it, and then they can't respond to your big attack and your Wolf Run and things like that. So that's my main board, and then the lands are pretty simple. I'm running 4 Hallowed Fountain and 4 Glacial Fortress, the white-blue lands, so I can hit my double white for Supreme Verdict, my double blue for Sphinx's Rev, Tamiyo, and Jace, and also triple white for Angel of Serenity. But for the other shock lands, Breeding Pool and Temple Garden, I'm only running 3. But I do continue to run 4 of the slow lands. There's the Temple Gardens, and then the 4 Sunpetals. And then the last 4 land slots, which I'm running 26th land, in case you're wondering. I have 1 Steam Vents and 1 Sacred Foundry, so I can Farseek out. If I have a blue on the board, I can search out, a Steam Vents if I need my double blue for Sphinx's Rev, Tamiyo, Jace, those kind of things. Chances are I usually do need the double blue more than the double white. But if I'm worried about hitting my Supreme Verdict, then I can search out a Sacred Foundry, hit my double white, and usually be good from there. And then, of course, 2 Kessig Wolf Run. I was experimenting with just doing 1, and then the other one was a Stomping Ground, but I don't have much green in the deck. In fact, Farseek is the only green in the deck, so Stomping Ground was never a land that I searched for. I always search for Steam Vents most often, and sometimes Sacred Foundry. So I decided to just cut the Stomping Ground altogether, add a second Kessig because I wasn't seeing it as often as I would like to, and now I see it a little bit more, and it's just a little bit more consistent that way. So that's my main board, that's my land, and I'm going to go ahead and do a quick rundown of my sideboard. I have 3 Restoration Angel and 3 Centaur Healer. These are my sideboard against like aggro variants and things like that, of course, like Naya Blitz, things that help me stabilize, get to my Wrath, get to my late game, get me to that Sphinx's Rev where I can pick up a Aurelia's Fury and assemble an Angel of Serenity, something that'll help me just kind of turn the tables. I really want a Bramblecrush. It's not an acidic slime, it's a Bramblecrush. It lets me hit Planeswalkers, it lets me hit enemy Kessigs and enemy Nephalia Drown Yards. Plus it can be snapped back, so I really like that. And I'm not really, I don't run Resto very much, and I probably wouldn't board in Resto against control, like Nephalia Drown Yard stuff. So Bramblecrush is a little bit better because I can snap it back. I want to run a Ray of Revelation. That's because I've noticed that my deck is really susceptible to like Oblivion Ring, Detention Sphere. So I like to have the Enchantment Hate in case, in a control matchup they do run those, which a lot of people, at least at my local FNM, seem to. Also, it's good against Enemy Assemble the Legion, which is a really difficult thing to answer if I don't have one of my own to match them. So those will come in. Against control-heavy decks, I got a couple Dispels, help me keep up with their counterspells, and help me ensure that I can get what I need to resolve. One of Elixir of Immortality, it's pretty straightforward. Turbo 5 is a thing, Nephalia Drown Yard is a thing, so Elixir is definitely a really good thing to have in. Or in games that just go really long, you want this to refresh your deck and keep going without having to worry about decking yourself out for a bunch of Sphinx's Revs. Of course, one of Psychic Spiral for that Nephalia Drown Yard. As you can see, I have a lot of sideboard hate for Esper Drownyard control. That's because it is an extremely good deck, a very difficult matchup, and I feel like with my 4 Supreme Verdicts main board and the Farseek that I have a pretty good consistency against aggro and mid-range stuff, so I like to focus my board on a little bit more difficult matchup, which may change based on how many Esper Drownyard I expect to see at a PTQ or something like that. But Sacred Spiral, able to be snapped back, good against the Nefali Drownyard stuff. And then I got a couple Purify the Grave. Now this is like a special thing that my team and I have been working on, and we decided that, I'm not sure if Ariel talked about this in any other videos, but a lot of the graveyard hate that's popular in most decks is Rest in Peace, and I decided that Purify the Grave is just way better, because Rest in Peace eliminates the entire graveyard, especially mine, and because I'm playing Snapcaster Mages, then I want to keep my graveyard active. This allows me to just pick off the specific things that I care about. You go to reanimate Angel of Serenity or Crater Hoof, I can just purify the single target. Or if you go to Flashback, I can just hit the target. If you go to Snapcast or something, I just pick off what you're targeting. You know, I don't care about your whole graveyard. I just care about the one thing that you're going to do at that time. Plus, it gives me a couple uses out of it. With the graveyard, it can be milled away, and I can still use it, which is really good in Snapcaster-heavy matchups like Nefali Drownyard control sometimes can run quite a few Snapcasters, and it's nice to be able to keep them off that. And then finally, a one of Witchbane Orb may come out, but I mean, it's kind of a staple card. The one I don't really see very much, but it's really good against Nefali Drownyard again. But it's also good for like Jund decks where they run Rakdos, Return, and Slaughter games. And you really don't want them to rip out your Verdicts or your Revelations, things like that. So that's the quick sideboard. Now the thing I'm talking about next is how the Dragon's Maze spoilers so far are affecting my archetype and what kind of changes I've been playtesting. And how my deck looks at an FNM versus how it looks now. At an FNM, the Restoration Angels, the Centaur Healers, and 3 Thragtusk come in the main board, along with the Snapcaster Mages, and the Angel of Serenities and the Tamiyos and the counter spells come out. That's pretty much all it really is. The 2 Tamiyo, 3 Angel, and the 5 counter spells come out for just that mid-range creature-heavy life gain board to keep me up with such a heavy aggro meta at my local FNM. And then I've been playtesting Voice of Resurgence in the deck, and it seems to be extremely good. I highly recommend trying to get this card if you're thinking about playing a green-white control deck like Bant control. I don't know how Voice of Resurgence is going to be in aggro. I think as an aggro player like Naya Blitz or Gruul aggro, you usually want something a little bit quicker. I think Voice of Resurgence is a more defensive card and good against, you know, the mid-range and control players. So I really liked it for this build. It was kind of weird because I was wondering what kind of cards to playtest with my archetype. And I didn't even think about Voice of Resurgence at first, but after a while it dawned on me, and I put 4 in, playtested extremely well. You know, it keeps your opponent on guard all the time. It makes them think more, which is great. You always want to be able to make your opponent think harder than you do. So even just a turn 2 hate bear that he is, I mean, it's good against aggro because he sits there and he's a double blocker. He blocks one turn, he blocks the next turn. After that, you just wrath. And which I was able to do with him, of course, which was amazing. So I'm definitely for him. I'm definitely going to pick 4 up. And if you're playing anything like this, I recommend picking some up. So that's kind of like what my deck looks like for FNM. Centaur, Resto, Thragtusk. With the other Dragon's Maze cards that I was interested in is, because I'm splashing red, was Turn and Burn. So far, one of my favorite cards spoiled from the set. It handles enemy Thragtusks without giving a beast token. It handles Angel of Serenity without giving them their creatures back to their hand. It handles Boros Reckoner. Anything really that has an ability, it gets rid of it and you don't have to worry about it. It's a 0/1. The only downside is that it can't handle +1/+1 tokens. So if there's a champion that pairs with 4 +1/+1 counters on it, and I go to turn it, it's going to be a 0/1, but the +1/+1 counters are still there. So it's all you're really doing is giving it -1, -0. So it's not as effective with creatures with +1/+1 counters on them. But it is extremely effective against a majority of the other big names in the meta right now, like Angel of Serenity, Thragtusk, Boros Reckoner. Even Falconwrath Aristocrat and Olivia are really good creatures that you would want to turn. And my favorite thing about it is that on their combat, you can Snapcaster the turn. You can't fuse it from the graveyard off a Snapcaster, but you can Snapcaster the turn effect to turn a creature like a Thragtusk or something that they're attacking with, or even like a Falconwrath Aristocrat, which loses flying, so it brings it down to the ground, and your Snapcaster Mage can block it without dying. I think that's a super, super cool 5-mana combat trick that you can do with your Snapcaster Mages against some of these more powerful mid-range decks that are out there. So I definitely recommend trying it out. It seems like, in my opinion, I think that and like Far and Away are going to be really, really good popular removal in the format. So anyway, that's my list. Those are my ideas with the new Dragon's Maze spoilers that are coming out. If you have any ideas or thoughts on how my deck is, send some comments. Let me know. I think I'll try and get a playtest video up sometime soon. I'm not sure exactly when it's going to be. Our team has been kind of busy, so we'll try and get one up though for sure. I think we got a request for this Bant control versus like an Esper control. It's a long-winded match, that's for sure, but we can do it. And yeah, so just leave some comments, any ideas you have or recommendations, thoughts, concerns you have about the deck. I'll post the deck list in the comments there or the description. That's it. And I guess that's it. So thanks for watching. That's my Bant Wolf Run control. I'll see you around.